Good evening and welcome to Connections. In honor of Veterans Day and those who have served our country and supported our freedom, we are having a special program this evening. Our program will honor those who have served and remember all those who served our country. It's no surprise that 5 of the passenger and crew members aboard Flight 93 were service veterans. William Joseph Cashman, U.S. Army paratrooper with the 101st Airborne Division. Patrick Joseph Driscoll, U.S. Navy, served on the destroyer, the USS Power, during the Korean War. Andrew Sonny Garcia, air traffic controller with the California Air National Guard. First Officer Leroy Homer, U.S. Air Force, U.S. Air Force Academy, served during Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and Somalia. And John Talagnani, U.S. Army, stationed in Japan following World War II. And a huge thank you to all of the 40 passenger and crew members aboard Flight 93. The actions taken were one of the most courageous acts in American history. You were the first citizen soldiers to fight back against terrorists on American soil. Tonight, we will be speaking with 4 veterans who all served during the post-9/11 global war on terrorism, a conflict that would span almost 20 years. Our first guest this evening is John Hamilton. John is the co-founder of Project 957. John, would you tell our audience how the mission of Project 957 and connects with the mission of Flight 93 and the Flight 93 story?
Absolutely, Donna. Thank you for meeting with us this evening. And I'd like to say hello to everyone out there that's dialed in across the country and wish all of our veterans joining us a happy Veterans Day, and thank the friends, and there's maybe some family of Flight 93 that is listening in. So the reason the 957 project has a common mission with the friends of Flight 93, the 957 project is a very unique veteran service organization. We're tiny. There's 46,000 veteran service organizations in the country. Can you believe that there's that many veterans who have decided to take upon them some sort of mission? So we started very organically with a friend of mine, where he invited me to his classroom to talk about service. I had been to the Flight 93 Memorial on the 10th anniversary of September 11th. And in my own mind, what those people did on that plane has been very special to me since the day it happened, essentially. Having, not long after that, having to join that fight that they were forced to be into. So when I came to speak to my friend's classroom, for some reason, I just naturally talked about, on that very first day I ever visited the classroom, I mentioned Flight 93 and the people on that airplane. A couple of years later, we formed this effort very organically, just kind of a mission that we stumbled upon. And we thought, as we brought veterans into classrooms to talk about courage, resilience, service, and teamwork, that actually Flight 93 would be the most amazing place to start, because it's a common thread. We fought in the war on terror, but those citizens on day one of this new war in this new century, they were put in this situation where they all had to come together and for each other and for all of us fight back against this horrible thing they were exposed to. So I heard Jack Grancolis in your last one of these forums talk about it being a silver lining on a very dark day. So that's where we began all of our conversations about courage, resilience, service, and teamwork on 9/11, about what happened on Flight 93. And we feel so passionately about that we actually named our nonprofit the 957 Project, which is the time of day that the passengers and crew of Flight 93 stood up for all of us and for each other and saved our White House or our Capitol. And we know, just like in combat, we're all serving something bigger than ourselves, but any veteran of any conflict will tell you they fought for that person on the left and right of them, for their friends. And I know in my mind, I always think these guys are heroes, and they are, and we should always talk about that. But more than anything, I think we all know what they really wanted to do that day was get home and see the people they love. So also in our mission, the thing we do, number one, before we even talk about veterans and young people, is we honor the families and the heroes of Flight 93.
Thank you, John. And John, would you like to introduce the members of your team who are with us this evening?
Sure, I certainly would. Has Kate joined us?
No, we haven't seen Kate yet.
Okay, well, hopefully the last shall be first in that case. So hopefully we'll see her very soon. But with us tonight is one of our team members, Rudy Salcido. Rudy and I served together in the United States Army, and he is a stalwart volunteer of going into classrooms and talking about our mission. And he's also been there with young people at the Flight 93 Memorial. That's kind of our capstone event. We bring young people and veterans to the Flight 93 Memorial, and we have these conversations about courage, resilience, service, and teamwork with young people to impart those values. Rudy's been there from almost day one out there with us. And then also, we are very honored to be joined by Doc Jacobs, who's a volunteer with another amazing organization of fantastic, great Americans. And I don't want to steal his thunder. Doc, can you tell us about all the amazing things you're involved with?
Well, I hope you guys got a lot of time for this.
We do.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you for having me in the 957 project and United 93 Memorial. I represent Gary Sinise Foundation as an ambassador. I also do MIA recovery ops with Terra Search, which is a nonprofit, and we bring home fallen service members from World War II, and we're looking to expand into Vietnam and Southeast Asia. I am finishing my master's in forensic science, specialized in investigations, and on top of that, full-time family man and author of my new book that just came out this week, McCoven. So always my biggest mission though is here to help the veterans and pass knowledge and experience off to the next generations that are following in, whether they join the military or not. Service to community and country is key. So again, thank you for having me, and hopefully I'll chat more in a little bit.
I would love to say that Doc came with us when we came to the last visit, the 957 project conducted to the Flight 93 Memorial. We did in conjunction with the Gary Sinise Foundation, and we were so honored to have Doc join us along with his fellow Gary Sinise ambassador, Danny Prince. And they're just a couple of just fantastic Americans, and we are so happy to know them and serve alongside them in these missions.
So, John, we're talking about the last time that you and the Sinise Foundation were here. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Because that was a very interesting leadership program that you all did with a group of students from Virginia. And so the family members, we had Gordy Felt was part of that. David Beamer was part of that. Kenny Nackey was part of that. So, Doc, how about if I start with you and tell the audience about your experience with the families interacting with the students and the veterans?
Well, just meeting the families and hearing them talk to the students, and even the listeners that came in that were visiting the memorial and the museum. Just so empowering hearing those stories, and just things that aren't really shared and publicized, which is what this educational project is. And again, thank you to John and the 957 project for opening that up to newer generations, because it's so important. Especially, I mean, you see what's going on in the world right now, and so not to compare, but I mean, it's just so important to get younger generations involved. But so to interact with the students, the veterans, and then especially the family members of United 93, just so incredible. And I mean, I have like full body chills right now just thinking back to the experience, like just so incredible.
And so what impact do you think it had on those students who were here those days? Well, you were actually with them in Pittsburgh on a day, and then you came to the memorial on the second day. So, you know, did you have the opportunity to hear from them what kind of impact this event had on them personally?
I think it had a huge impact in a lot of ways because it opened up their minds to more than just, well, I have to go join the military or I have to just wave a flag and do my part. I think hearing from different people from all walks that either were impacted directly that day from the family members, the locals that were there and called 911 and said, hey, there something just happened, like all the way to us older generation veterans that talk about just the importance of, you know, like Gary Sinise, his mission is we could always do a little more. And so I think that really opened up the students' mind to like just a broader perspective of just what the heroics that took place that day and then the 20 plus years afterwards. So I think it had a very big I want to say like a big umbrella impact on them.
And you mentioned something very important, and I'm going to go to Rudy because Rudy, he talked about, you know, we're not talking about just serving the military, we're talking about serving our communities. And when we've spoken in the past, you've given some really good examples of students that you've interacted with through 957 and how their lives have been changed and how they've become more community minded.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and just like what Doc and John have said, you know, even more so, I think nowadays our kids and our youth need to hear the story of Flight 93. It's one of those things that this week I was overhead. I'm actually an air interdiction agent. We're Customs and Border Protection right now, and I was overhead over a pursuit of a suspected human smuggling, and I found out that the driver was 15 years old. You know, and I think what could have happened, you know, if he had heard or been introduced to the story of Flight 93. You know what I mean? I have a 15-year-old son. You know, obviously he's we've raised him, you know, and knowing history. Did that 15-year-old ever hear that story? You know, he was from El Paso, Texas. For all I know, he probably could have been my neighbor. I don't know. You know, and it's just one of those things. What could have happened had he had heard that story? And ever since my first event, you know, when I went back in 2016 and I visited the memorial, I knew that the 957 project was doing doing something very special. The questions that the kids come up with, you know, and their questions on how can they give back, you know, very specifically, you know, I want to give back. It's just the military is just not for me. And we provided examples on how could they possibly do that, you know, just something small in your community, you know, organize a small event, you know, go out there and do good. And they were like, you know what, that's actually very true. We can do that. So whether it's in person, whether it's virtual, you know, something like what we're doing here, I think goes a very long way, you know, to kind of help propel the future, you know, in the right direction. So that's the impact that I've had, and or that it's had in me. So it's been great.
Very good. Hi, Kate. Thanks for joining us.
That mute button.
Yeah. Kate, I think you're on mute.
I knew she'd be here.
I'm so sorry. I really am. I thought it was 7. I just got on just now to make sure everything was ready.
No worries. No worries. We're glad that you could join us.
I apologize.
No apology necessary. Actually, you came in at a really good time because Earlier John mentioned the crest that you use with 957, the synonym, and you had talked last week about resilience and how resilience ties in with the military, what the Flight 93 40 passenger and crew members. Do you want to expand upon that a little bit for our audience this evening?
Sure. In talking to a group of students through Project 957, the students and I were talking about resilience, and I think that's an important subject for young people today, really people of all ages. And I was explaining that I found that to be such a key part of life, that if you, as a young person, if you're looking at how do I get through life, because life can be hard, one of the things that the military gave me was a community of people that has really helped with my resilience throughout my life, because it's a community of mismatched people in the military that sometimes you would never have met or come into contact with, people from all walks of life. But the relationships and the bonds that you have in the military really are so strong, and they are part of your community that help you through the difficult parts of life. And that was the thing that really struck me when I participated with Project 957 at the memorial, was that same sense of community with the family members, that obviously you could see how their relationship and their community of getting together and talking about their loved ones at the memorial, and telling the funny stories as well as the serious stories, had really helped with their resilience over the years of dealing with this very tragic but heroic incident that they're trying to grapple with about their family members. And I definitely saw a lot of correlations between military service and what they're doing, and how that it's a very important part of healing.
So that's another key word that I want to key in on, and I'll ask each of you to kind of talk about, how has this project helped with your healing from what you've experienced in your service to our country? And John, I'm going to start with you.
Well, it's interesting. Quite often, you never know what you're in the middle of until it's done or halfway done. And my co-founder Peter Finley and I started this thing, and originally I said, well, this is an educational nonprofit. We are service members, and we go into schools, and we thought we were talking about civics and history in Flight 93, which we are. And Peter used to say, well, John, I think we're a veterans nonprofit too. I'm like, no, we're an educational nonprofit. And then it took him about 7 or 8 years, but I'm like, oh, okay. I see what this has done for me personally, because going, and like Kate was saying, spending time around the Flight 93 story and around Debbie Borza and Todd's dad, David, and Kenny, and all of these people, and you, and all these people, the Gary Sinise Foundation, I'm like, wait a second, there are all these people that are just coming together to do what they can. And on 9/11, it was the people in that airplane just doing what they can. Now it's all kinds of people that are still doing what they can. So when being a part of that and being around that, like Kate is talking about, it's this sense of community that you're busy just trying to do good things. And I don't know what, if I did not have the 957 project in my life, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I don't know what I would be, but I know one thing, that I'm a better human being for being around people like that are on this call tonight, and the people that are listening in. And that's pretty special.
And Rudy, how about for you?
The past 22 years have been, we've had our good times and we've had our bad times. Veterans, just like anybody else, we have our good times, we have our bad times. The 957 project has always helped me to remember why we do what we do, you know, and above all, it brings us together, right? Just to make us feel whole again. There's always something. Things were never going to be the same after September 11th. And with 957 project, it always helps us bring it back, you know, and help us realize what we got at this particular time. And it's just a reminder and a sense of accomplishment, a sense of healing, a sense of service, you know, that you know, there's always that next day. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. Things are going to get better. And it's just every single time, every single event that I've taken part of, I walk out and I feel, you know, 100% better. You know, it helps lift my spirits. And it helps me to just remember that we're doing this for a reason, you know, to carry on that memory of everybody that was on board and everybody that was affected, and what better way to do it than with your friends, you know. So
very nice. Good. And how about you, Doc? Anything to add?
Just from working with nonprofits in general, or
Just about how working with nonprofits, working with students, being part of this community, how it's helped with your healing.
oh well, working with nonprofits and actually starting one of my own, and giving scholarships out to kids of military veteran families, like and then transitioning on into Gary Sinise Foundation and doing missions overseas, doing MIA recovery. Like it gives a sense of purpose. And whether you're working with kids or you're finding bodies of our fallen heroes and their personal effects to bring them home, to bring closure to their families, like it all gives a deep sense of purpose, especially when like myself, with my 92 surgeries that I've had, stateside surgeries, I've had to reinvent myself many times. And even over the last year, becoming a double amputee last November, it kind of gave me another challenge to reinvent myself. So what do? I go and I start a master's program, and I get another book published. And so instead of just being go out in the field, now I'm just more of like, all right, well, I can change direction. And in doing so, I'm hoping that can inspire not just students in general, but also other people with disabilities, other veterans that are going through hard times, and all of their loved ones too. I've had many times kids at my daughter's school that are just like, you know, oh my God, you got robot legs, like, oh my, and then so working with all these organizations, great organizations, but it also just, again, just a big sense of purpose.
Very nice. And Kate?
I think for me, because I've only had the opportunity to really do one event with the 957 project. So it impacted me on sort of a personal level, and then a broader, like, hope for America level. So I think I was raised by a father. The reason I joined the Army was because he said, growing up, he said, you're very blessed to live in this country. The reason this country is great is because people give back to it. If we want the country to remain great, you have to give back. There's lots of ways you can do that. You can volunteer in your community. You can, and he would list all the ways, but he was like, one of the ways is, you know, through military service. And so that's what led myself and one of my sisters into the military. So to see that sort of my dad's message that put my feet on the path to the Army being replicated in the 957 project is very personal for me. And it's very cool to see, because I think that's so important. That message that my dad taught me when I was a kid is something that the young people of all, you know, they need to hear that we do live in an amazing country, and we have a lot of privileges, but we have to work to maintain those. And teaching those kids about service and sacrifice, and that there's all kinds of different ways that you can serve and sacrifice. It's an incredible lesson for them to learn on such a very personal level. You know, if you're just sitting in class getting a lesson, it is not going to reverberate through you in the same manner as these events that the 957 project is doing. And you could see it in the kids from day one to the end, the change and how you could see it. And that was incredible. And from another more personal standpoint for me as a veteran, it was just, you know, it was things I hadn't thought about in a long time. How 9/11 happened, how, you know, Doc and I talked about this a lot because we were both there. How that event put our paths, you know, on the way to war, and all the ways that has impacted our lives. And I just, you know, you go through life and you bury things and you're like, I've dealt with that and I've moved on. And you just, sometimes you got to go back and revisit those, and being able to revisit those surrounded by all these other veterans that had their own stories and, you know, memories of that time. It was really significant to talk to all these veterans, and I didn't know any of them, but John. So it was neat from that standpoint. And I think Doc and I both said, this is like healing in a weird way that we didn't know we needed.
Very good. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. And John, you also did, you and Peter did a leadership camp with a group of students this summer. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? And you had Debbie Borza as part of it.
Oh, absolutely. And I want to also, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So real quickly, to kind of echo what Kate was saying, in the first couple of years of this entire thing, Peter, who's an educator, my co-founder, and I were like, this is cool, but what is this? Like, from a holistic perspective, we're like, what? We didn't even know. I think it's fair to say we knew what we were doing by bringing young people to the memorial and mixing them up with veterans. That was positive, but it's only after doing it a few years that we're like, we're like, we didn't even know what this was all about. But now I think we do know what it's all about, and we've gotten some great expert advice from other nonprofit leaders, and we've done some unique things. Like, one of the things we did this year, which really was something we thought we would do in the future, but we collaborated with a nonprofit called Willing Warrior out of Bull Run, Virginia. And these folks they have their own unique nonprofit genesis story, where a couple started taking cookies to wounded soldiers in Walter Reed. Well, next thing you know, 5 years later, that's a 37-acre facility where they love on soldiers. And then they partnered with us to give us a venue to do our first leadership camp. And through your gracious introduction to Debbie Borza, Debbie came and spent, oh gosh, half the week with us as we took this group of young people through multiple days of leadership events, service projects. We had a former combatant commander, a 4-star general was there. We had all the way down to a retired warrant officer like me. So we exposed, and NCOs. So we exposed all these young people. And on the final day, we came to the memorial. But that's where I call that week the week of women. I was combat arms in the military, and I served with some some outstanding women veterans, but I'd never been immersed in the leadership of Debbie Borza. And, you know, she's a force of nature, that one. And as she spent time with young people, and I got to hear more of her story, and she talked, of course, it always comes back to Deora for Debbie. It always comes back to her daughter, the youngest passenger on Flight 93. And you talk about, you know, all of us have been in the military. I was in the military for 24 years. I'm an airline pilot. I observe captains every day. I'll be a captain if I wanted to be. But her single-minded focus on the mission of honoring her daughter and the friends and the families of the passengers of Flight 93, I've never experienced like leadership in that manner. Like, in every discussion, it always comes back to, well, John, you know, how can we use this to remember Deora? and it's a special thing, and it's transformative and it's life-changing. And so, yes, so we did that, spent that week with Debbie at the Willing Warriors retreat. And then we got to come to the memorial, and Debbie took us out to the sacred ground, which is, it took me several days to process what that meant. It's a very special thing to be able to do. Yeah, and then we came a month later with the Gary Sinise folks. So yeah, we've done a lot of really neat, innovative things, and that's just one of them.
And I remember on that trip, you also went to the fire department in Shanksville, and the former fire chief, Terry Schaefer, was there and talked to the students as well.
Oh, and Terry, from what I understand, Terry found out about this kind of ancillary effort, right? And then he volunteered to be a part of this. We didn't really approach him. He approached us. Yeah. And Terry is, for those of you in the Flight 93 community, Chief Schaefer was the first responder, the fire chief, the volunteer fire department in Shanksville. And he was on the ground there with his men, within minutes of that airplane hitting the ground. And I was blessed to meet Chief Schaefer on the 10th anniversary of September 11th. I happened to be at the firehouse, and another part of the Flight 93 story that we didn't really understand until this year is not only the relationship of the friends and family of Flight 93, but Shanksville itself and all the citizens of this ultimately American community that not only honor any visitor that comes through their town to see the memorial, but they just go out of their way just to be gracious and just to be good neighbors and to be decent Americans. And their story is amazing too, just the community story, and it's very special. And so it's just great to know Terry, and he came to talk to our kids, and we got to spend some time in the firehouse, and we could have spent hours with Terry at the firehouse, but just what a blessing.
So anything else that you want to talk about this evening with the 957 project and your experiences and the students and their reactions?
I could talk all night. I wish my friends would say something extraordinary to fill the void. Rudy, say something.
No, what you really see in the kids, and John and Kate have talked about it, but the resilience in the kids, when we started, or when John started 957 project, and I started volunteering, this is pre-COVID. I started in 2016. And so when COVID started, everything shut down, and when everybody had to adapt and overcome. And when we started holding these virtual events, that's how you knew that the 957 project was really going to grow. And I've seen John and Mr. Pete Findler, the co-founder of 957 project, and how I've seen and witnessed so many brainstorming events, like, hey, we're gonna talk to these people, we're gonna get organized with these people, with this organization, we're gonna bring in, to see them work together, right, and get these kids involved, right, and to share the message has just been awesome, and going back to the kids, during COVID, they were very eager to learn. Everybody was very cramped up, nobody was really socializing too much. So whenever we had these events, the interaction between the kids and myself and other veteran volunteers was amazing, and that was really, it was a little glimmer of hope, that we saw, that we were going to get through COVID, and everything was going to return to normal eventually, so That's been really awesome to see and to witness and to be a part of.
Hey, and Donna, I do want to add to something Rudy kind of reminded me of here. You know, we love doing this mission, and obviously we want to spread our mission, but I have this metric that's very simple, that if we can impact one kid a year, if we can make a difference in one kid, and we, you know, we know their names, and we've changed lives. That's not an understatement. We've got some young people that are friends, or now young adults, and you know, this year there's some extraordinary kids that you know, get involved in this, and it changes the trajectory of what they want to do for a living. They want to serve, maybe not going to, you know, we have multiple young people that experience this and they decide to serve, which is extraordinary because we need defenders of freedom to continue to keep this country free. But the ones that you know, there's sometimes a kid that'll do something that just will, you know, it just blows you away. And that is a treat. That is really a neat thing.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the cool things was, you know, the kids, they have to want to be there. So that in and of itself is unique right off the bat, that, you know, they want to be there. And you can see that. I mean, you're never going to have a perfect group of kids, and I get that, but they wanted to be there. The quality of the questions that they asked, seeing them grow from the beginning where, you know, they're just standing off in their group, to by the end, they're approaching veterans, they're approaching the family members to ask more questions. You know, they've grown in confidence and interacting with these adults that are there. And then there were at least, I think, 2 kids on the trip I went on, 2 young men who jumped at the chance to go again. So they had already been, and at the last minute they had an opening, and it impacted them so much they wanted to do it again.
That's
and
awesome.
I thought that was cool. And then I think letting them know, you know, I think sometimes we tend to be like, you got to serve, you want to serve your country, you got to join the military. And I love the message of, you just got to serve your country in some capacity. And you can see the kids kind of grasping that, like, oh, so if I go do these other things, I'm still helping my country, because I don't really want to be in the Army, and that's fine. You don't have to want to be in the Army. And I really liked that, like seeing them sort of grasp that concept of, oh, it's about service. It's not about military service. It's about service. And that's a very important message. So those were some of the things I really enjoyed about the kids.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think during one of our conversations, we talked about how in my generation, it was expected that you do some type of community service, and we've gotten away from that. So I think it's a great message. And Doc, go ahead.
Well, Kate reminded me of something. So one of the students apparently said that they don't want to serve in the military, but they want to go make prosthetics and advanced prosthetics. And I'm just like blown away by that. Like John was saying, that every year, I'm sure, you know, since he's been doing this, or Rudy, that it just blows your mind every time. Because I mean, I think like service to community is like, okay, well, you're going to go pick up trash at a local, you know, like here in San Diego, they have a thing called I love the beach, or I love my community something, and they go like pick up trash and kids, and all the way from like kids to prisoners to go do that. And then, but you know, and then you think EMS and volunteer firefighters and all of this, and then to go build prosthetics like that, to me, like that just blew my mind. And so I'm just very, very happy, like Kate was saying, that you can see the wheels turning, and just that they're just thinking beyond of like what we would even expect them to.
Right.
Yeah, no, and there was this one particular question that happened, or that was asked during my first visit, when I actually went to the actual memorial, and it was, "Hey Rudy, I'm a conscientious objector. How can I serve?" I didn't even know what that meant when I was at that age. You know, I don't think I even knew what that meant until I actually joined the service. You know, so to see the kids and you possibly give that little, you know, that little insight on how can they give back, you know, with their particular thoughts and beliefs. That was, you know, for whatever reason, that question has always, you know, stuck with me. My response is just, hey man, just be a good person, give back to your community, be a good neighbor. And that is one way how you could just continue to remember, right? And just be a good citizen, you know, and with that, I think you'll be okay. And it was like, oh yeah, I think I will be all right, you know. So it was for whatever reason, that question has always stuck with me.
Well,
I also like.
Go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Don.
No, go
Oh,
ahead.
no. So one of the other things that we demonstrate to the young people all the time is also do your best. You know, growing up, we used to hear a lot of things about work ethic and working hard and, you know, never underestimate the power of hustle and commitment to excellence. And so these young people, we also expose them to all the stories of these amazing people on this airplane. You mentioned the 5 veterans that were on there. But goodness gracious, every single one of these people have lessons in their life of how they were as family members and professionals and leaders. And that's another way that we also just encourage the young people to just, you know, take ownership of what's going on around them and develop, if they don't have it already, cultivate a sense of excellence about everything they do. And that's just about them helping their own success in their own lives. And of course, you know, service is a part of anybody that's truly happy. Is an element of them is giving to something bigger than themselves. So the people on Flight 93 also help us talk about excellence, because there were so many amazing people on that airplane. It's like it's almost like somebody made up this story, but they didn't. It's a true story.
Right. Well, what I'm going to do now is invite our audience to put questions that they may have into the chat. And while we're waiting to see if we have any questions for all of you, one of the things that came to mind as you're all talking this evening is not only did you serve your country once, but I believe you're serving your country still by doing what you're doing with this next generation. I mean, it's so important to have positive role models like each of you that they can connect with and that they can relate to and that they can, you know, be involved with you all. So I commend the work that you're all doing. I think, you know, my first introduction to the 957 project was this past spring when John and Peter brought a group of students to the memorial. And I just had to go see what this was all about because I had no idea. And it didn't take me long being part of that day to just see the magic that was happening with the interactions going on. So, you know, I applaud each and every one of you for all that you're doing. It's fantastic. And I know that you don't like praise and you don't want anybody to tell you what a great job you're doing, but you guys are doing a great job. So let's see if we have any questions in the chat box.
We better at least have one.
Let's see here. Is there any way you can get involved with the passenger and crew families in the 957 project?
So that was someone asking to volunteer with our organization. Absolutely. Go to the 957project.org. That's the time 957 without the colon.org. If you Google the 957 project, it will come up. Actually, that's probably the fastest way. And we've got a connect link there, and we can get right in touch with you. And we're particularly interested in anyone that can help us, but specifically post 9/11 veterans are our favorite folks that we like to partner alongside with, because that's the majority of our volunteers. Thank you.
It looks like that question came from Miss Isabella Cole out of Jackson, Kentucky.
Yes.
Awesome. And John, there was a little, I guess, historical question on that in regards to the passengers and crews, if they were able actually to breach the cockpit in regards to actually Flight 93. Do you want to talk to that?
Well, I have my opinion, and well, first I'll defer to Donna, who works with the U.S. government as the official nonprofit, and then do you have any? I think they did. I don't think there's any doubt, because while I've not heard the cockpit voice recordings, only family and investigators have heard that. I've talked to family members who have heard it, and it is my understanding that they are most certainly. The opinions are that they got in that cockpit, but I know the official stance of the U.S. government might be another thing. I don't speak for the official federal government, just as a person. Donna, do you want to touch that with a 10-foot pole?
No.
So, but that's my opinion, and just based on conversations I've had with people that are very invested in this matter, that Kenny, I know he won't have a problem with me saying Kenny Nackey. I heard him say out there on the sacred ground the other day, and I know I shouldn't get into this because I know, this is very personal, but I'll just leave it at a lot of the family members have made it clear that they think they were in the cockpit, and, being an airline pilot and knowing the condition of those doors and knowing what I know about airline security, based on my professional opinion, I am a professional airline pilot. I'm confident they were in that cockpit, but, we don't know 100% for sure, I guess, according to evidence and rules of law and that kind of stuff. So, and that's all I'll say about that.
So, what have you found to be the most impactful point or lesson learned during your careers for students to learn from?
Read that again, Donna.
What have you found to be the most impactful point or lesson that you've learned during your careers for students to learn from? So what could you teach students from lessons that you've learned in your career?
Well, I'll briefly hit that and give my colleagues a couple of minutes to formulate something, but so many things come to mind, but something that I learned just this last couple of weeks as an airline pilot, never, always strive to be a lifelong learner, never stop learning. And so you're asking me, what have I learned? It's never quit learning. And what that means is great leaders, great coaches have to be innovators. They have to look for new ways to do things. They don't lessen standards. They don't throw out things that are important. They don't disregard right or wrong, but they're always open to something valuable from people younger than them, people with other life experiences from them. That's one thing that jumps to mind, is never stop learning and never stop looking for someone that might have something important to share with you and to teach you. And that's especially important for a guy like me that tends to like to talk more than listen. The big thing is just try to listen.
Now that was good, John. For me, Donna, is that being open-minded. The day you stop, closing your mind and just being, just being hard-headed, it's not going to work out for you. Being open-minded, listening, just like what John said, listening to the people that you're in charge of, and listening to your superior officers, and just getting all the information that you can, and then driving on with the best information that you got. And just being a good team member, knowing when to lead, knowing when to follow. And it's just just that, it's amongst other many lessons learned, but that's probably the biggest one that I've learned, is just being a good teammate, being open-minded, and using all the information that you can to make the best decision at that time, and drive on with it. So.
Oh,
Yep.
I'll go next. And I was thinking while John and Rudy were talking, my thing would be to be understanding and empathetic, because for me as an APT, a lot of people don't take a second to put themselves in my shoes, and this came from like my leadership in the military was, you can't do that, you're an amputee, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't. And so for me, I use that as fuel to my fire, and just say, you know what, no, I am going to do that. You're not going to tell me what I can and can't do, because you've never been an amputee, and I pray to God you'll never be an amputee. So for me, it's being understanding and empathetic, and that goes a long, long way, because when I became a leader in the military, and now that I'm a senior medic with this organization, just hearing people out, like John was saying, just be a good listener and just hear people out and understand, and try and be empathetic and understanding towards them and their situation, and you'll get people to respond and react and come to you more. And so that's kind of my lesson as a leader, and working with younger generations as well.
Kate, anything to add?
Yeah, I do. Of course I do. So
Yeah.
I would say I probably have three things that sprung to mind. The first one is, I always would say to any young people that one of the things the military taught me is you have to get out of America. And I don't mean going to a resort in Mexico and drinking a pina colada. You have to get, I think that is so important to understand how blessed we are in this country, is if you get out and you go somewhere else and you see how the rest of the world lives. And it doesn't have to be a third world country. I mean, sometimes it can be as simple as even Europe. You will understand that we still are a very blessed country. So get out, and outside America, I'd say that you have to find some faith, and you have to find your tribe of people, because you need both of those things when life is hard, and life is hard for everybody at some point. So find your tribe, whoever, it doesn't have to be family. Maybe you don't like your family. Maybe your family's no good. Find your tribe of people, whoever they are, stick to them. And then I think the final thing would be, you start understanding so many things the older you get that you wish you understood when you were 15, 18, and 24. But we are the primary obstacle to our success. It's not the world or other people. It's us. It's our own heads. And I truly believe that we can do whatever we want to do. If we decide that we want to do it, we can do it. And I think if I could just make young 17, 18-year-old kids understand that you will get in the way of yourself repeatedly if you don't figure out how not to. I just think that's such a valuable lesson that I have waited to learn until I'm 48.
Yeah, we definitely at that age, and probably even still now, we tend to underestimate ourselves and our abilities. Sometimes, just speaking to my wife, she's like, man, why do you underestimate yourself? I was like, you're 41, you're 40, how old am I? I'm 41. You're 41 years old, and you still question if whether you're doing is enough, and can you do more? It's like, why are you always, I don't know what it is. But yeah, 100% Kate, that's spot on. Everybody's message was spot on. But yeah, don't ever underestimate yourself. And when you do, just like what Kate said, find those people that will tell you, hit you across your head, like, get out of your system, man, go.
So
And I'm
John,
gonna, yes, ma'am.
no, go ahead. Are you gonna add to this?
Well, I love what Rudy said about don't ever underestimate yourself. And I love what Kate said earlier about there was this personal thing that happened with her at the memorial, and this hopeful thing that happened for her, Hope for America. talking about underestimating people, the people that started the horrible chain of events that caused us to be here tonight, I think the last thing that they ever imagined was 22 years later that people would use that day as a way to lift each other up. And ultimately, that tells me you never underestimate this country and the power of what these people, what I think Churchill said, America will always do the right thing after they've exhausted every other option. Never underestimate America, because you know, we're still a very courageous people. So that's what just came to mind.
Awesome. So, John, I think this is for you. This is a text from Debbie Borza, and she wants to know the students who attended at the Wounded Warriors, how are their device projects going?
Well, tell Debbie that Sarah, we spoke with today, and we're having a meet. Sarah is the executive director of Willing Warriors, and we saw Tina today, and we will check. I was thinking specifically about one young man in some of the short answer is I don't know, Debbie, but I will get an answer back to you as soon as I can, probably after our meeting on Tuesday. I will check into all that.
Okay.
But that's indicative of the level. Also, a lot of times what will happen is young people will come to the memorial and they'll have something going on in their life or a challenge or something they're looking to do. And then what will invariably happen is one of the veterans and the young person will start a conversation related directly to that challenge that young person is working on, whether it's a project or a leadership thing. And that's fun, because then you get into this mentorship on these individual students who are doing things in their life, and it's a lot of fun. And so Debbie's just following up on some of that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's one thing you'll learn is Debbie will follow up.
Yes, ma'am. That's what a leader does.
She will hold you accountable. So we had an anonymous attendee say, this has been a great lesson tonight. I really appreciated it so much. Thanks for all you do. And then Judy Petrusik, who is an ambassador at the memorial, says thanks to all of them for their service.
Oh, thank you. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but over here in El Paso, Texas, I've taken part of 3 veterans breakfasts. I've taken part of a Veterans Day parade today at my daughter's school. So thank you to all the listeners and guests that have actually showed their appreciation during Veterans Day a week. So we really appreciate that.
Okay. Anything in closing this evening?
I'd like to thank Rudy, Kate, and Doc for giving of their time. I am always astounded by my fellow veterans that want to come help us. And, you know, we did another event with a school today, and there's all kinds of folks that always help us do this mission. And I'm just personally grateful for their help.
Yeah, and I will second that, John. I appreciate all of you. And like I said, you served your country, and you're still continuing to serve your country with the projects that you're involved in. And we appreciate you so much. And thank you so much for joining us this evening and sharing your stories with our guests. So happy Veterans Day to all of you. And I hope you get to enjoy the rest of your evening. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Take care.